Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the principles of global health equity so far. My name is Phaedra Henley, and I'm the director of the Center for One Health, as well as an assistant professor. And I'm also the course director for this class, PGHE. So today I'm going to talk to you about the introduction to One Health. Later this week, you'll hear from my colleagues about the different triads of One Health, including human, animal, and environmental health, and how they relate to the bigger picture of what One Health is today. So this first picture here is when I first recognized what One Health is. So this is Lake Naivasha in Kenya, and this is where I did a lot of my research work. And it's kind of the first time I saw One Health in action. So this is one of the largest freshwater lakes in Kenya, and there's a massive floriculture industry that surrounds the lake. It's also a source of livelihood for people in the lake with fishermen, as well as people working in the floriculture industry. So here, where I did my work, I saw the intimate connections between the environment, the freshwater lake, the animals that live around the lake, the people that depend for their livelihoods on this freshwater lake, as well as the health of the communities. So when we come back to campus in January, we will go out into the field, and like me when I was in Lake Naivasha, it will allow us to see One Health concerns more tangibly and urgently. So I hope you look forward to coming back to campus in January, and we can see One Health in action. So today and later this week, we'll learn some more common vernacular and some understanding of what One Health is and how it fits into the larger picture of global health equity. So this intimate connection between human, environment, and animal health is now more commonplace observation. However, for much of the history of public health, this was not so obvious. After over a century of focus on diseases, their biological causes, and the correction of exposures such as clean air and clean water, and the facilitation of the responses such as immunization, improved nutrition. So public health discourse shifted to embrace the concept of determinants of health as extending to social, which you learned about earlier in the course, as well as environmental. So this moved the discourse and the science of health into an unprecedented level of complexity. And this happened just about the same time in the 70s, where public concern about the environment heightened. So you'll see here a book called Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson. Um, and this book is credited with starting the environmental movement in North America in the 70s. So in her book, Carson talks about the ubiquitous spraying of DDT, which is a pesticide that was used to kill mosquitoes around the world, and it was sprayed everywhere without much concern. However, in her book, Carson explains that once these pesticides enter the environment, they not only kill the bugs, such as the mosquitoes, but they also make their way up the food chain and threaten bird and fish populations and could eventually sicken people. So much of the data and case studies about the human and the animal health implications of the spraying of DDT had been known for some time. However, Carson was the first person to put them all together for the general public, and to draw these stark and far-reaching conclusions. So Silent Spring, this book, was met with fierce opposition from the chemical companies, and others went on further to attack Carson's scientific credentials, as she was trained in marine biology, and they also attacked her personal character, particularly as she was a single woman. However, this work, Silent Spring, spurred a reversal in national pesticide policy. It led to a nationwide ban on DDT for agricultural purposes. And as I mentioned, this book is credited with starting the environmental movement in North America in the 70s. So this is an example of one of the global challenges that we're facing, what is being called as a wicked problem. So these are wicked problems or complex problems, and the frequency and the impact of these wicked problems, those that sit at the intersection of human, environment, and animal health, have been increasing over the past 50 years. So you can see some of the characteristics of what makes a wicked problem. They're typically complex, multisectoral, as I mentioned, and as you saw in the example of Carson and DDT. They often can't be addressed in isolation, and we'll learn about some tools to be able to look at problems such as this. They often result in unintended consequences. For example, again, if we look at what we just talked about, DDT was used to stop malaria and kill mosquitoes, but it eventually moved up the food chain and impacted humans, which was not an intended consequence of the use of DDT. So these are what we call wicked problems. And these are the type of problems that a One Health approach, which we'll talk about today, are looking to address. So I'll just go through 5 wicked problems, and this list is not inclusive or exhaustive, but it gives you an idea of the wicked problems that a One Health approach could address. And after that, we'll talk about some tools that and principles that a One Health approach includes. So the first wicked problem I'll talk about is the loss of biodiversity. So this is one of the biggest global health challenges. It is said to rival climate change as one of the biggest threats to human health of our time. So we've now reached rates equivalent to major mass extinctions of the past. We're in what is known as right now as the 6th mass extinction. However, different from previous mass extinctions, the cause of this one are human beings. We're in a time that is known as the Anthropocene. Earlier this year, the World Wildlife Foundation's Living Planet report was published, and this gives an overview of the state of the natural world. And this tracked over 21,000 different species between 1970 and 2016. And this study revealed that there was a 68% average decline in global vertebrate species of populations between these years, 1970 and 2016. Even more significantly, wildlife populations in freshwater habitats fell 84%. This loss of biodiversity is irreversible. And a loss of the species is not just the loss of one species, but the genetic and ecosystem services that they provide. And this loss reverberates throughout the entire ecosystem and can directly and indirectly impact human and animal health. We'll learn later this week about environmental health as One Health and more about the essential services that ecosystems provide, but these include the provision of clean air and clean water, to the discovery and the production of medicines, to support for spiritual and cultural values, pollination, pest control, that is needed for food and nutrition security. So we can see that this loss of biodiversity can have massive direct and indirect impacts on human health. And these are more strongly felt in Indigenous communities and people that live in poverty, as they are often more reliant on natural resources for their health, for their well-being, and livelihood. And these populations, their survival is most impacted by this loss of biodiversity. Climate change due to human activity, again, the cause of these wicked problems are due to us humans. Climate change is due to increases in atmospheric concentration of greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide, into the air. Climate plans submitted in 2015 put the world on course to warm 3 degrees Celsius by 2100. Scientists say that rises of temperature up to 3 degrees Celsius would lead to a variety of damaging impacts, including extinction of many species, like we just talked about, the importance of biodiversity, a rise in lethal heat waves, a reduction in groundwater supplies, and catastrophic sea level rise. The health impacts of global environmental change can be direct, such as heat stress and heat stroke. It could be due from injuries due from natural disasters. The impacts on health could be secondary, for example, due to the alteration of natural systems. And this could change the geographic range of mosquitoes, which could increase vector-borne diseases. Or they could be due to social disruption, civil conflict, and population disruption as people move into new areas or start to compete over these depleting resources. The range of health impacts on animals and humans due to climate change are massive, they're growing, and many of the health impacts are unknown. Pollution can have a significant impact on human, animal, and environmental health. Pollution is the largest environmental cause of disease and death in the world, responsible for an estimated 9 million premature deaths. An example of pollution is plastic pollution. And it is estimated from 1950 up until recently, an estimated 6.3 billion tons of plastic has been produced worldwide, of which only 9% has been recycled. This large amount of plastic waste enters the environment and eventually could end up in animals where they either ingest them or they get entangled in them. It is estimated that 90% of seabirds contain plastic debris. Another example of pollution is air pollution. As I mentioned, this is credited as the largest environmental cause of disease and death in the world. However, a paper that was recently published by our Vice Chancellor, Professor Agnes Benawaho, looked at the links between COVID-19 and air pollution. So among all this suffering that we are undergoing with the COVID-19 pandemic, an event has unfolded that suggests that this type of crisis, this time of crisis that we're in, could also be a time of fundamental and revolutionary change. So because of lockdowns due to COVID, there was a remarkable worldwide reduction in ambient air pollution. These decreases are so great that they can be seen from outer space, as seen in the figure in the bottom left. In northern India, air pollution is at a 20-year low, and concentrations of fine particulate matter in New Delhi have fallen by more than 50%. In this paper, cleaner air during this period is estimated to have saved 11,000 lives in Europe in April in 1 month, and 77,000 lives in China in January and February. So these great gains show that cleaner air is possible and that there is some hope to address the massive impacts of pollution on our health. Another wicked problem is loss of habitat. And people are invading new territories and changing habitats. We can see that a substantial part of the world's surface has been altered. This loss of habitat devastates animal populations, contributes to climate change, and decreases biodiversity. As an example, are the ongoing fires in the Amazon. At its peak of these fires in 2014, it's estimated that 36 football fields were deforested per minute in the Amazon. This causes population density to increase into what is previously uninhabitable areas. This puts people into closer contact with animals and compete with resources with the animals, and also increases infectious disease spread between animals and humans. The last wicked problem I'll quickly outline, and these are most commonly linked to a One Health approach, which is emerging and re-emerging infectious disease. But as we saw in the previous 4 examples of wicked problems, there are many environmentally focused problems that would also benefit from a One Health approach. So zoonoses are a type of infectious disease whereby the source is an infectious animal or vector. Scientists estimate that more than 60% of known infectious diseases in people are spread from animals, and 75% of new or emerging infectious disease, such as COVID-19, in people are spread from animals. 5 new human diseases appear every year of animal origin, and bioterrorism threats come more from animals. These zoonotic diseases are a strong representation of the strong links between animal and human health, where diseases are easily transmitted between animals and humans. Lastly, we'll just quickly touch upon COVID-19 and One Health. The unique features of COVID-19 are its expected origin at the human environment and animal interface, and its rapid explosion as a result of unprecedented levels of human interconnectivity, mobility, and global trade. COVID is widely suggested to have originated in Asia from a bat reservoir, possibly also involving other bridge species such as the pangolin. The risk of emergence of infectious agents capable of jumping the species barriers increasing, with the ability of novel infectious agents to spread rapidly around the globe due to increased travel and trade. These diseases, as we're seeing with COVID-19, can have devastating impacts on communities, health systems, and economies, resulting in years of social and economic recovery. Pandemics are inherently disequalizing, disproportionately affecting individuals and groups in vulnerable conditions. This is already widely visible in the current COVID-19 pandemic, with the most vulnerable population strongly overrepresented in cases and case fatalities globally. COVID-19, the crisis that we're living through right now, drives home why One Health, which recognizes the fundamental interconnectedness of humans, animals, and their shared environment, as well as has a strong focus on equity, is key to ensuring the healthy and sustainable future of the planet and its people. So you should be familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which were announced in 2015, and they go up to 2030. And these came after the Millennial Development Goals from 2000 to 2015. So the expansion of these goals, so you'll see there's 17 now, and include new goals such as life below water, climate action, life on land, and it are expanding and these reflect what we're discussing in this lecture, that these many considerations are linked and must be considered, so that, and that these all contribute to human health and sustainable development. So the recognition of, this interconnectedness of many drivers of health is a great movement towards embracing a complex, holistic understanding and interdependency of health. So now I'm just going to talk through a bit about what is One Health specifically. So seen here, you'll see 3 of my friends, or one actually, the old dude is my uncle, and the other 2 are my good friends from Canada. Ian is the Director of Forest Policy for the Ontario Forest Industries Association. Dr. Emily Keats is a research analyst at the Center for Global Child Health, and she's working towards Sustainable Development Goal 3, good health. Ian's working towards Sustainable Development Goal 15, which is life on land. And my uncle here, Dr. Jeremy McNeil, is a professor of biology who is looking at Sustainable Development Goal 15 and investigating animal health. So I brought together these 3 professionals to discuss One Health, and they soon realized that the problems that they're addressing in tandem are not so different after all. So we're going to look at 3 case studies and investigate how these 3 seemingly disparate professionals connected the different components of their work in order to advance One Health. So we're going to look at 2 case studies in 2 communities at risk of reemerging and emerging infectious diseases, one of the wicked problems that we were discussing previously. The first is a case in sub-Saharan Africa, and I'm going to show you 3 photos, and I'll give you I'll pause just a couple of seconds for you to think about in your mind what the emerging infectious disease is, and then I'd also like you to think about how you would connect the 3 photos. So first, what is the reemerging infectious disease, and how would Ian, Emily, and Jeremy connect the 3 photos? So the first photo is deforestation. The second photo are workers carrying a corpse in hazmat suits. And the third is a bat. So again, think through what is the reemerging infectious disease and how would you connect these 3 photos? Deforestation, a bat, and workers carrying a corpse in hazmat suits. So if you're thinking about Ebola, you're correct. I'm just going to talk a bit about how the photos are connected. So the natural reservoir for Ebola has yet to be determined. However, bats, seen here, are considered to be the most likely candidate species. So it's posited that deforestation or destruction of forest habitats are considered to be the most likely candidate species. It's most likely that these bats, who are suspected to carry the virus, were brought into closer contact with humans due to deforestation. So these forests were cleared for subsistence agriculture, for mining, industrial palm oil farms, and this distraction of the natural habitat drove bats into areas to look for food, which brought them into closer contact with humans. And the virus may have been transmitted due to this increased contact. Relatedly, poverty drives individuals to encroach deeper into forests, making zoonotic transmission more probable. So we're going to look at a second example in another one of the regions where communities at risk of reemerging infectious disease live in southwestern or northwestern Ontario in Canada. So again, I'll show you 3 photos and you will have 45 seconds. You'll just have a few seconds, sorry, to think about what the reemerging infectious disease is and how you would connect the 3 photos. So how would the 3 professionals, Emily, Ian, and Jeremy, connect these 3 photos? So the first is a deer. The second is deforestation. And the third is a bullseye rash. So again, think right now what the reemerging infectious disease is and how would the 3 professionals connect the 3 photos. So the first photo is deforestation, the second is a deer, and the third is a bullseye rash. So if you're thinking about Lyme disease, you are correct. And this is estimated, this disease, to affect 300,000 people a year in the US and Canada. And a study found that the presence of forests or forest ecosystems was the only variable that consistently elevated the risk of Lyme disease in humans. In many areas, expansion of suburban areas, so the growing of cities into previously uninhabitable areas such as forests, has increased border contact between humans and tick-dense areas. Human expansion has also resulted in the reduction of predators that hunt deer and mice, which are the primary reservoirs for Lyme disease. As a consequence of increased human contact with host and vector, the likelihood of transmission of the disease has greatly increased. So you could see that Emily and Ian and Jeremy found that one of the main connections between the 2 case studies of reemerging infectious disease in these communities at risk is the alteration of forest ecosystems, which are bringing humans into increased contact with wildlife and the pathogens that they carry. Of course, human health and the environment and animal health are complex, and they depend on a myriad of factors. But as Ian and Emily and Jeremy noticed, there's clearly a link between life on land and good health. This example demonstrates the human health impacts of changing ecosystems. With increasing pressure on the global environment, including a projected population increase to 8.5 billion people by 2030, is leading to environmental changes and ecosystem impairment, including forest clearance and land cover change, which in turn can cause direct health impacts, such as alter infectious disease risks, such as Ebola, and Lyme disease. So Einstein famously pointed out that we cannot solve a problem with the same mindset that created it, and that we need a new way of thinking if humanity is to survive. Faced with the limitations of traditional sciences and public health interventions to address wicked problems, scientists and practitioners alike have developed new ways of conducting research and training, such as the One Health approach, which I'm now going to expand upon. So the One Health approach defined here is a collaborative, multi-sectoral, and transdisciplinary approach working at the local, regional, national, and global levels with the goal of achieving optimal health outcomes, recognizing the interconnection between people, animals, plants, and their shared environment. One Health has emerged in response to complex health issues or wicked problems that we discussed about at the start of the lecture. One Health is founded on the interactions between environment, animal, and human health. It recognizes the inextricable links between humans and their biophysical, social, and economic environments, and that these links are reflected in the population's state of health. One Health connects and transcends boundaries between different disciplines and encourages collaboration with academics and communities at risk. Here, ideas can cross borders, encouraging new ideas to form, and drives transformative discovery and solutions. It seeks to encourage translational knowledge that can lead to action and change. Thus, the One Health approach provides a way of looking at complex systems that lead to undesirable effects, such as what we just saw in infectious disease outbreaks. So you would have learned about here how you would define health, or how health is being defined in the world, with the WHO's definition as a complete state of physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The Alma Ata Declaration added on that health is a socioeconomic issue and as a human right. And we hope after this introduction to One Health and the few further lectures you'll have later this week and next, that we also need to consider animal health and environmental health as basis for defining what One Health is for humans. So I'll now talk through 6 different principles of One Health. So these define what a One Health approach includes. And that includes knowledge to health, knowledge to action, stakeholder analysis, transdisciplinarity, sustainability, systems thinking, and participatory. So first, it is a participatory approach where there's equal weight given to both local and academic knowledge. It requires involving the local population in the research conducted in their community. Feasible solutions are identified by exchanging knowledge and jointly analyzing problems and developing solutions. These could spark novel ideas, approaches, and solutions. A participatory approach can lead to action. The aim here is to increase knowledge and to translate it into interventions, policy, and social change in order to improve health. And this again highlights one of the principles of a One Health approach, which is knowledge to action. We don't want knowledge or papers just to sit on a shelf, but knowledge needs to be adapted or modified in order to be translated into an action to be undertaken in a community. Often place and context shape knowledge generation, and that makes the results more tangible and accessible outside of academia. Another principle of the One Health approach is systems thinking. And we need to use systems thinking in order to decipher the complexity of wicked problems. It's important in order to design and evaluate interventions and generate solutions. So there's a famous fable of 6 blind men and an elephant. It's a story of a group of blind men who have never come across an elephant before and who learn and conceptualize what the elephant is by touching it. Each blind man feels a different part of the elephant's body, but only one part, such as the tail or the ears. They then just describe the elephant based on their limited experience, and their descriptions of the elephant are different from one another. The moral of this fable is that humans have a tendency to claim absolute truth based on their limited subjective experience, and they ignore other people's limited subjective experience, which may be equally true. Systems thinking invites us to see complex issues from multiple perspectives in order to suspend our judgment by questioning our own assumptions, and to include insights from different disciplines and different ways of knowing. Systems thinking provides a tool for a way forward for operating more effectively and successfully in complex real-world settings. Systems thinking allows us not allows us not to view different stakeholder perspectives in a competitive win-lose frame of mind and encourages us to explore win-win solutions that improve the overall health and sustainability of the system as a whole. Stakeholders are actors who drive the system and who are the ultimate beneficiaries. Typically, the stakeholders in One Health include the ultimate beneficiaries such as animals, humans, and the environment, as well as the organizations that work to protect them, such as research institutes, government ministries, professional bodies. However, identifying these stakeholders who will contribute to the One Health activities and to co-develop solutions to complex health problems can be difficult, as these problems often affect all sectors of society, which is why a stakeholder analysis is a key principle of a One Health approach. Next, we will look at the differences between multi, inter, and transdisciplinarity, with transdisciplinarity being the ultimate goal for a One Health project. Multidisciplinary is that everyone is working on the same problem, but often still in the silo boundaries of their own disciplines and under their own corresponding sets of assumptions, restrictions, and philosophies. This results in adding to the professional body of knowledge, but with very little innovation, because these assumptions and restrictions within their own discipline are mostly fixed. Interdisciplinary is the overlap of disciplinary boundaries to form subdisciplines, with a blending of some common assumptions, restrictions, and philosophies. An interdisciplinary approach can imagine new knowledge and theoretical solutions. Lastly, transdisciplinarity is transcending disciplinary boundaries by drawing on non-traditional ideas to cross-fertilize any contradictory assumptions, restrictions, and philosophies. So a transdisciplinary approach could create new theories, models, or methods, and innovative thinking and technology. Lastly, sustainability is a key principle of a One Health approach. Transdisciplinary action that we talked about, community partnerships through a participatory approach, can become foundations to ensuring that solutions that come from a One Health approach are sustainable. There are also competencies that are defined for One Health professionals, and these include what is known as soft skills, or I like to call them cross-cutting skills, those that you'll be learning throughout the MGHD program, such as leadership and management, communications, systems thinking, policy and advocacy, as well as discipline-specific, or what is known as technical skills. Infectious disease management, pandemic preparedness and response. For those who are interested in One Health, we'll take these more discipline-specific skills modules in the new year. So if we go back to the story of Rachel Carson in Silent Spring, where she wrote the book in order to draw these connections between what we're doing to the environment and the impacts on animal, human, and environmental health. And as I mentioned, this generated a storm of controversy and criticism, particularly from the chemical companies that were producing DDT. However, her intent from publishing this book was to inform the public about the risks of pesticides. She wanted to encourage responsible and well-managed pesticides use. So indeed, from her book, it increased public awareness and people began taking steps to reduce exposure. So we can see that looking at this problem from a One Health approach allowed her to come up with some solutions in order to address human, environment, and animal health. So often when I look at One Health problems, I can come out feeling very hopeless. However, there are many reasons to hope, and I hope that a One Health approach can be a way for you to look at these complex problems that we're very intimately with COVID-19 being affected by, as a tool to move forward and to think about how we can change the world for the better. So, as an example, here is the story um, of the Green Belt movement, which was organization started by Wangari Maathai, as shown here. And this focused on the planting of trees, conservation, and women's rights. So she started a group in order to plant trees. And the idea was to provide an income to women and to preserve the environment. And this allowed women to break the bonds of poverty, and it also promoted environmental awareness. Wangari Maathai was the first African woman and the first environmentalist to receive the Nobel Peace Prize, and she was the first woman from East or Central Africa to get a PhD. And her work gives me a reason to hope and a reason that we can make positive change by preserving our environment and animal health in order to improve the health of humans. Relatedly, another reason to hope, and I always want to show this photo so I can rub it in that I met Jane Goodall. So I just met her by chance when I was working on developing a field program in Uganda, and we were lucky enough to sit down and have a beer with Jane Goodall and to talk about some of her work in Tanzania. So this famous photo um, that you see here from National Geographic, when she flew over Gombe National Park in the mid-80s, you could see that its hills were barren. She stated that all the trees were gone, all of them. Um, and if you fly over today, she said, the hills are now lush and green, and the chimpanzees that made her a global icon have 3 times the amount of forest that they had before. And this is all due to conservation efforts. So she told us that they are working on an aftershot of this famous National Geographic photo in order to show the dramatic improvement in landscape. She mentioned that the most successful and important component of establishing this conservation effort was the provision of microcredit to communities that had a success rate of 96% return on investment. The success, again, of these conservation initiative provides hope, she says, the key to effect change. So that brings us to the end of the introduction to One Health class. And we can see the importance of broadening our definition of health and embracing complexity in order to address some of these wicked challenges that humanity is facing. Later this week, you'll learn more deeply about the human health impacts, the human health components of a One Health approach. Enjoy.